Hello and welcome to Monday's ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines in the southeast. Tributes to Angela Glover from Brighton, who drowned in the tsunami in Tonga. Her brother says she was the beating heart of the family.
She irradiated love all around, and I think without her we are just broken.
Plans for the military to take over patrols of the Channel to stop the small boats and the migrants.
Also tonight, preparing for a future with less rainfall and more demand for water. Reservoirs and a desalination plant for the southeast.
And just 8 years to go, so are you ready for the road when new petrol and diesel cars are banned from sale? Good evening. The brother of an animal lover from Brighton who died trying to save her dogs in the tsunami in Tonga has paid tribute to her. Angela Glover drowned after an undersea volcano erupted, sending waves crashing inland.
Her brother Nick Eleni, back in Hove, said her body was found by her husband James in bushes near their home. He'd held onto a tree for safety, but Angela and her pets were washed away. Charlotte Wilkins has more.
She lit up the room when she walked into it. She was loved by everybody. She was just a lovely human being.
Drawn to the Tongan culture, Angela Glover made a new life in the Pacific island with her husband James. It was her deep love of dogs which led her to open an animal welfare charity.
I think Angela dragged James to the other side of the world to follow her dreams, and James embraced it.
But their dream became a nightmare on Saturday when a devastating tsunami struck the island. It's thought the couple had been trying to rescue their dogs when they were swept away. James survived.
He was able to cling onto a tree, and I believe Angela was washed away, and James was unable to save her.
Angela was first reported missing, but today her family were given the worst possible news.
James is shattered, and he's a lovely, lovely man, you know, and we will just shower him with love and hope that, we all remain part of his life. For our family, Angela was the beating heart of our family. She irradiated love all around, and I think without her we are just broken.
Charlotte Wilkins, ITV News, Brighton.
A teenager who sparked panic after firing a fake gun in a college in Sussex has pleaded guilty in court. Sanjis Draymanis, who's 18, was also armed with a knife when he sent Crawley College into police lockdown in April last year.
A teacher and their colleague sustained minor injuries during the incident. Draymanis admitted possessing an imitation firearm with intent to cause fear of violence. Malcolm Shaw has the story.
An April afternoon last year, and scores of armed police descend on Crawley College after reports of a man firing shots. The buildings were evacuated and staff and students led to safety as officers searched the college and its grounds. The 18-year-old who sparked the massive operation was Sanjis Draymanis, seen here at his first court appearance. The 18-year-old was armed with a knife and a blank-firing handgun, which he pointed at a member of staff and pulled the trigger before being overpowered. Today he appeared at Lewes Crown Court.
Sanjis Draymanis pleaded guilty to possession of an imitation firearm with intent to cause fear of violence. At a previous hearing, the 18-year-old admitted 2 counts of assault occasioning actual bodily harm and possession of a bladed article on school premises.
2 members of college staff who tackled the teenager suffered minor injuries and were praised by police for their bravery. Prosecutors have said previously that Draymanis carried out the attack with the intention of being shot by armed officers.
Judge Christine Lang ordered a background report on the case. She said she was interested in the widest possible picture of what led up to this young man doing what he did on the day. Sanjis Draymanis is due to be sentenced on the 11th of March.
Tonight, the college thanked staff, students and the emergency services for the courage and resilience they displayed during what it called a distressing time. Malcolm Shaw, ITV News.
The government says the armed forces will be used to help stop people crossing the channel in small boats. It means Navy ships will patrol the channel with much more sophisticated surveillance technology.
Up to now, Border Force has been limited to just 5 cutters. Over to our political correspondent, Phil Hornby. Phil, why has this announcement been made today?
Well, the government say this is an urgent problem and the MOD or the military will make a big difference. The government's critics say this announcement is an attempt to announce some sort of populist policy in a desperate attempt to shore up a beleaguered Prime Minister. Here's the Home Secretary.
My decision to bring the MOD in is vindication, effectively, that we need to absolutely strengthen our defences in the Channel. We want to stop illegal crossings. People are dying in the Channel.
And there's yet more talk today of processing asylum seekers in foreign countries, even in Africa, which Labour says A is wrong and B won't work.
Any truth in the reports that the government wants to have asylum seekers processed offshore in countries like the Gambia?
This government considers all options in terms of outsourcing, processing and how we actually remove as well people with no legal basis to be in our country.
And I mentioned earlier that the Prime Minister is under pressure at the moment. At the weekend, the Tory MP for East Worthing and Shoreham, Tim Lawton, broke cover on Twitter saying this: "I've regretfully come to the conclusion that Boris Johnson's position is now untenable, that his resignation, is the only thing that will bring an end to this sorry episode." And he says he's working with other colleagues to try to achieve this. And a senior member of Mr Lawton's party down in Sussex, who was campaigning with him at the weekend, said, "We just want this to be over. If it isn't sorted soon, we will not win any seats in the local elections that are coming up in May." The other South East MP who's called for Mr Johnson's resignation is Sir Roger Gale. Like all MPs, he's been inundated with emails over this weekend. This is what he told us about them.
No more than 20% in favour of the Prime Minister and 80% pretty hostile.
So 4-1 hostile, and I think that reflects the postbags of most MPs who of course were also meeting their constituents and their party members over the weekend. Again, I think it's rather ominous for Mr Johnson that very few Tory MPs are speaking publicly today.
Phil Hornby, thank you.
In other news, 2 drug dealers from Sheerness who threw crack cocaine out of a window during police searches have been jailed. George Wright and Ashley Sharp panicked when officers unexpectedly turned up. Police saw suspicious activity nearby and the house door open, so went in. They found drugs with a street value of more than £1,000.
More southeastern trains are running from today. A reduced timetable had been introduced due to increased staff absences. The operation aims to have all services restored by the end of the month.
More than 150 trees are being planted in the Ada and Worthing area between now and March. The project is funded by the Brighton Permaculture Trust, the Tree Council and the local authority. Oaks, sycamore and apple trees will all be planted.
The jury's still out in the trial of a man from Sussex who's accused of encouraging terrorism. Abu Bakr De Gaius was captured on video addressing worshippers at the Brighton Mosque in November 2020.
In a speech, he allegedly says violent jihad is compulsory and made a stabbing gesture. Well, Joe Cosham is at the Old Bailey for us. Joe, what more can you tell us?
Yes, well, Abu Bakr De Gaius from Saltdean stands accused of encouraging terrorism during an incident at the Brighton Mosque and Muslim Community Centre in November 2020. These are some of the pictures of him arriving at the Old Bailey this morning. Now, this incident was just after evening prayers to an audience of around 50 people, which included children. And it was all captured on video, a video that was shown to the jury. In his speech, Deghayes allegedly says that jihad is fighting by sword and will remain compulsory until the day of resurrection, and made a stabbing gesture during his speech. Now, the prosecution argue the speech was not given naively or innocently and say his words demonstrate him to be an Islamic extremist. The defence argue that Deghayes has a right to a freedom of speech and to his religious beliefs. Deghayes denies the charge. The jury have been sent home for the day, so the trial will continue tomorrow.
Joe Cosham at the Old Bailey, thank you. Well, you are watching ITV News in the Meridian region. We're very glad you're with us this evening. Coming up, demystifying cervical cancer. Campaigners highlight the help that's out there after abnormal smear test results. Well, of course, for more on all of our stories, do go to our website. The address, as always, itv.com/Meridian. You can also give us a call, the number 0808 1010 095. And remember, you can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter.
The southeast could run out of water in the next few decades if drastic action isn't taken. That's the findings of a new blueprint for the future of water resources. The plans include a new reservoir near the village of Blackstone in West Sussex. It also calls for 4 water recycling schemes in the whole of the southeast, including at Elsford and Peacehaven, and a desalination plant in Shoreham.
Well, a new reservoir at Broadoak north of Surrey are also part of longer-term plans. It would require £5 billion of investment, with the onus on water companies to reduce wastage from leaks. Well, Derek Johnson is in Blackstone in Sussex. Derek, how likely is it that we are going to get this reservoir?
Well, it may not happen at all. It's quite possible it doesn't happen. If it is built, it will be in a couple of decades and well away, miles away from where we are here, because there are several schemes in the pipeline being talked about for the next 50 years or so, resurrecting again this idea of Broadoak near Canterbury being a reservoir for the future, but for decades in the future. And it's all about trying to match supply with demand, because we are running short of water. The village of Blackstone, north of Brighton. Residents here woke up to the news they could have a brand new reservoir on their doorstep in the next 2 decades. It's part of a blueprint for the future released by Water Resources South East, an alliance of water companies, regulators and stakeholders, setting out ideas for how water can be managed in our region sustainably over the next 50 years, including this new Sussex reservoir.
It would supply around 20 million litres of water per day, approximately. There is further work to be done to look at its volume and its benefits, and the water would be taken from the Ada, taking advantage of high flows in winter, and really taking into account how our climate is changing, how we best kind of capture some of that.
Figures show a shortfall of 1 billion litres a day in the southeast as soon as 2040, rising to 2.6 billion litres in 2060. And a long-term investment programme is needed, as much as £8 billion.
A big gap between how much water we have available and how much water we need in the future. And essentially, to resolve that gap, we need to do 2 big things. First of all, we need to manage down the amount of water that we use. So that means reducing leakage, it means reducing the amount of water we use in houses and businesses. But we will also need to invest in some new infrastructure to strengthen the security of water for the future.
As part of the long-term vision, it's hoped to protect chalk streams like this one. There are many in the south of England. At the moment, we abstract water from their sources, putting them in danger.
It couldn't be more urgent. It's high time we sorted out the pressure we exert on these beautiful natural systems. I think that we've reached a point where people are increasingly concerned about the natural environment and the toll we exert on it. And the pressure we've been putting on chalk streams has been increasing and increasing as population and water demand go up and up.
Water companies need to get better at fixing leaks, but there are also plans for water recycling schemes and a desalination plant at Shoreham to turn seawater into usable water. The Environment Agency's already warned England could fall short of water in the next 25 years.
Derek, what's the time frame for all these plans?
Well, it's a way down the line because firstly, people are allowed to have their say on this plan or this blueprint really. Eventually it will be up to the water companies to put their own long-term plans to the government and to the regulators. But there are certainly lots of questions. Do we really need new reservoirs? Should we be taking salt water from the English Channel and turning it into drinking water? Certainly something that's never been done on that scale in this part of the world. Or really, is it up to us to conserve more water and up to those water companies to fix the leaks? There's probably only two certainties. We will pay if this has to happen, and if it doesn't happen, we will run out of water.
Goodness me. Thank you very much indeed, Derek.
Being told you have abnormal cells or HPV after a cervical screening can be an incredibly worrying time for the thousands of women who receive that diagnosis every year.
Yes, this week is Cervical Cancer Prevention Week, and campaigners are calling for more support and education around what to do if you end up with anything other than the all clear after a test. Here's Amrit Birdie.
After going to a cervical screening in November 2020, Charlotte Ruff received some news that she will never forget.
I opened the letter, obviously read, there's abnormal cells, burst into tears. I was like, oh my God, this is cancer.
She's one of the 220,000 women diagnosed with cervical cell changes every year in the UK, following a smear test.
Had the treatment there and then. 6 months later, went back, had my follow-up smear, which came back clear of abnormal cells and HPV. As women, we're not taught that this is potentially something that could happen to us, and it is quite common. I didn't realise until I kind of told a few people, and they said, oh yeah, I've had that too. I had that come back on my last smear or on my first smear. And then you realise actually you're surrounded by a lot of women who have been through this process, but nobody talks about it, and we're not taught about it, and the combination of that just means that you feel a bit lost.
New research shows over a quarter of women feel ashamed at receiving a diagnosis like Charlotte's. Dr Gaurav Gupta is a GP at Faversham Medical Practice in Kent. He says it's important to know the next steps after screening results.
Once you get your diagnosis of abnormal cells, you would then be either asked to repeat a test after a certain period of time or might be referred to a specialist service. Abnormal cells can usually be treated at an early stage without progressing to advanced cancer. So it is very important that if you have any questions, you ask your GP or practice nurse, but please take the opportunity to have a smear because it is very important to do so.
Samantha Dixon from Joe's Trust has been working hard on this year's Cervical Cancer Prevention Week campaign, which encourages women to banish the shame when it comes to abnormal cell or HPV diagnoses.
Cervical cancer prevention doesn't stop with screening. What's really important is that next stage, getting the results from screening. Every day at Joe's, we hear from those who are scared and confused when they receive this diagnosis. Ultimately, we need to reduce the shame, the fear and the stigma around a diagnosis, which is really worrying women at the moment and potentially preventing them from getting the support that they need at this time.
Cervical Cancer Prevention Week ends on Sunday, but campaigners hope the message of support when it comes to cervical screening results will continue for any woman that needs it. Amrit Birdie, ITV News.
Now, there has been a huge surge in electric car sales, with motoring experts predicting this year will be a bumper 12 months for the industry.
Figures show last month more than 1 in 4 new cars sold across the UK were powered by pure electricity. But while the government plans to scrap the sale of traditional petrol and diesel cars in 8 years' time, there are fresh calls tonight for an improved charging infrastructure in our town and city centres. Matt Price now reports on Britain's plans for a fuel-free future.
Alison Luckman and her husband Ben have been a part of the electric car revolution for the last 2 years. They made the switch from a diesel car to this EV as part of efforts to clean up the planet.
So I really wanted to contribute to the future of electric vehicles and switching away from utilising fossil fuels. So that was part of the reason that drove me to switch to an electric vehicle. So no engine, obviously, just batteries and a motor.
Alison knows it's fast and frugal, and she'd encourage anyone to give it a try.
The driving experience is is quite different to driving a normal petrol or diesel car. Power delivery is completely different. It kind of goes from 0 to 60 in the blink of an eye, and it's a really smooth drive.
There's been a recent surge in electric car sales. Over 25,000 were sold across the UK last month alone, which is a big increase on the same time the year before. In December, 38% of new car sales in Maidstone were fully electric, 18% in Brighton.
We hope that 2022 will be the year of the electric car, and it should be. 2021 saw great progress in the numbers of people buying electric cars. So the average UK motorist can save over £700 a year on their fuel by switching to an electric car.
The government's announced the sale of new petrol and diesel cars will be phased out by 2030. They want to see a greater uptake of zero-emission vehicles. But understandably, making the switch isn't right for everyone. There are two main issues for drivers thinking of switching away from a petrol or diesel car like this one to an electric. The first is range anxiety. How far will the car go before it needs to be recharged? And the second is infrastructure. Are there really enough places to top up the battery? Quentin Wilson is a motoring journalist and electric car enthusiast. He drives one himself, and he's keen to promote the benefits but knows more investment is needed.
We definitely need to do more, and the government needs to build more chargers, and public and private partnerships need to be made. We're going to see this model where for the 30% of people who can't charge outside their house and they don't have on-street parking, they will go to a rapid charging EV hub, if you like, much like a petrol station, and whack in 350 kilowatts of power, which might take 10-15 minutes.
The Department for Transport tell ITV News they've recently introduced world-leading legislation which requires new homes and non-residential buildings to have charge points installed. They go on to say this will see the installation of up to 145,000 new charge points across England each year. Alison hopes more people take her lead. One small change to what we drive could have a huge impact on the planet. Matt Price, ITV News.
I do fancy an electric car at some point anyway. Well, Holly joins us now. And Holly, today is Blue Monday, apparently the most depressing day of the year, but looking outside it was beautiful, hardly depressing, the sun been shining.
Well, that's true, and I think a lot of scientists would tell you that the science behind Blue Monday is probably a load of bunkum. But
really?
Well, I thought it was a good opportunity nonetheless to take a look at some of those blue sky photos from today. So let's start off with this one that's coming from Steve Collis.
Beautiful.
In Brussels, isn't that lovely? You can just see a tiny little bit of cirrus there. That's probably 20 or 25,000 feet high in the atmosphere. Not a cloud here to be seen in Hastings.
That's a lovely photo.
Isn't it gorgeous? This was by Chris Jennings. And we've got the white storks at the Nep Estate, enjoying the sunshine there as well, sent in by Cheryl.
So if the science of Blue Monday is bunkum, to use your word, what is the science of blue skies?
Do you know, that's a great question, and I get asked this a lot, and the answer is, so when we see sunlight, it looks white. It looks white to the human eye. It's actually made up of all the colours of the spectrum. The red end of the spectrum has a longer wavelength than the blue end of the spectrum. So as it travels through the atmosphere, the shorter wavelengths of the blue light get scattered more, and because they get scattered around the atmosphere, more of those wavelengths reach our eye. So to us, the sky appears blue, and also the eye is better at picking up that end of the spectrum as well. Blue skies also, and clear skies, also good for viewing tonight's wolf moon. Got a couple of quick photos of that. It's the first full moon of the season. Here it is behind the Jill windmill in Clayton, and very artistically captured here by Sid Saunders in St Leonard's on Sea.
Oh, fantastic.
So we'll be looking out for that.
We certainly will. Thank you, Holly. So then, will it be blue skies tomorrow? Will it be clear skies tonight? Let's find out from Holly.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Well, after today's bright skies, tonight underneath clear skies we're seeing temperatures falling away, a frost in places and a fog warning in force. This is valid until midday tomorrow. Fog thick for some and freezing for others. So a couple of hazards, I think, to bear in mind as we head through this evening and into tomorrow. High pressure dominating the scene. For Wednesday, a weak weather front moves our way. That could bring a little bit of patchy rain, perhaps, but not too much. In its wake, that high pressure builds back in again, some chillier air with us behind the cold front. But overall, I think a settled end to the week. Maybe more cloud around than we've seen today, but not too bad a look. I think it should be dry through the end of the working week. So out there at the moment, underneath clear skies, temperatures falling away, mist and fog forming, as I say, thick in places. And it could be freezing fog for some as well, which means you've got frost and fog at the same time. So yes, values down towards or a little below freezing for many of us. So some of us start with frost, some of us with fog, and some of us with both. The fog could be quite slow to clear. As we head through the day, we do start to find a bit more cloud wending its way across us, but still I think some decent spells of sunshine, just more cloud in general than today. Temperatures though similar, with highs of 7 or 8 Celsius. Our high tide times, you've got Dover there at 11:26 and again at 11:48 as we head into the evening. So Wednesday could bring a little bit of patchy rain, but not too much. I think the bulk of the day is dry and it should tend to brighten up as that weather front clears through. Some chillier air heads our way, so temperatures a little bit lower through Thursday and Friday, but still I think fairly settled. Some spells of sunshine to be had, but again, probably some chilly nights. Have a good evening.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Oh, staying cold, isn't it? I don't like that. Now, in just a moment, the ITV Evening News with Mary Knighton, and you've got the late news.
I
so
certainly
do join Andrew a bit later on for that.
For now, though, from the team here at ITV Meridian, thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.